Hello, everyone. Welcome to our amazing Workshop Wednesdays session. We are so excited to have you all joining us today. As you all know, I may, or let me take 3 steps back. As you all know, I'm the founder and CEO of Mentoring Collective. I'm also going to be your host for today as well. We have an amazing lineup of incredible technologists that will be speaking with us. And of course, this month's theme is Radiate Legacy. And so we're super excited to celebrate the wonderful month of Black History Month with wonderful technologists helping to empower the next generation of technologists in this space. So please let us know where you all are tuning in from. I'm seeing you all flow in, and we're super excited to have you here. I am here based in New York City, where the weather is good one day and then, a little cold the next, but I guess, hey, I'll take it. Um, Also, if you did not know, we have sessions happening every Wednesday. So, just like I said earlier, Workshop Wednesdays every single Wednesday from now, February, all the way up until September. We will be having workshops. So this is where you'll be able to learn about emerging technologies. You'll be able to learn about different tech tools, whether you're in design, you're an engineer, whether you're in data analytics, product management, project management, all the like. The goal is to allow these sessions to give you all insights on how you can upskill as well, and again with these incredible technologists too. So before we dive into today's session, just a few announcements. Please make sure that you are following us on LinkedIn for those of you who are viewing on our LinkedIn Live. And then if you are on our YouTube, go ahead and click that subscribe button. Give us a thumbs up and let us know what kind of content you're also looking forward to. I know we just listed some, but maybe you're also interested in other kinds of content. We also want to invite you to join our Slack community. You can visit our website, scroll all the way down to the bottom, and you'll see a Slack icon. Once you go ahead and click on that, you'll be able to sign into our Slack workspace, connect with mentors and tech professionals, as well as like minded individuals. So, for those of you who are new to Mentor Me Collective, we are a community driven organization. We're dedicated to supporting the next generation of technologists, especially first gen professionals, early career technologists, and also those who are transitioning. Through events like these, like I mentioned earlier, we want to make sure that we're providing resources, opportunities for mentorship or mentor relationships, and obviously real world insights to guide you along your career. So, with that being said, I'm incredibly excited to introduce today's speaker, Miss Madonna Wambua. She is amazing. She also brings over a decade of impactful leadership in software engineering to the table. She's a keynote speaker, she's an Android engineer, she's an author. It's given she's all those things and more. And also, her experience spans over software development, technology, strategy, and also innovation. She is a distinguished Google developer expert for Android. And we're just so excited and so blessed and honored to have her with us. Today, Madonna is going to share her expertise on building mobile applications in the AI era, offering invaluable insights and practical skills to empower you, I guess, along your tech journey as well. So, without further ado, I just want to go ahead and welcome Madam Madonna to the stage. Hey.
Hello. Thank you for the great intro. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yes, right. This is all of you. This is all of who you are. We're super
Um,
excited to have you. And yeah,
I'm just
totally.
gonna do the hat. You too. I mean, you're accomplished too, so great
Thank you. I'm
energy.
so excited. And it's honestly a blessing and a pleasure to have individuals like yourself
Yeah.
a part of my network. So I guess before we jump into today, what got you started with Android development?
That's interesting. So, a funny story. I got into Android because I got my phone and it had the snake game. And I couldn't believe who created that game because it kept frustrating me and it was so fun to play. I don't know if you
Yeah.
played the snake game. You remember the snake game? It was so
Hmm.
small. You remember it?
Yeah,
You
with the
played
little
it.
little
Yeah,
circle.
yeah,
Yeah.
the little thing. Yeah.
Pinball. Yes.
It kept frustrating me because it kept like there was nothing you could do once you reached the and then you were
The
like
full
you start
length.
again.
Yeah.
And then I kept thinking, what was the point of it? Like, we
Wow.
can't go very far, right?
Wow.
And I was like, who made this? I want to make something similar. And the first app that I made was a math game for my kids. And I was like, yo, look, my kids are not born yet, but I'm going to make a math game for them. So
That
that was
is
my
so
first application. Yeah.
wow. That is so exciting. Well, yeah, we're
Yeah.
super excited to have you. I'm happy to turn it on over to you.
Yeah.
Over to you.
Thank you so much. So I'm super excited to be here today. But before I present my screen, just leave in the chat where you're joining from, or have you experimented with Android? Do you know about mobile development? And then we'll talk about that more. So I'm going to present my screen, share my screen, share. I'm going to share that window. And then I'll come to this window and put present to view. And I hope everybody is able to see my screen. Let me go back here. Yep.
Yes. Good.
Yes, yes, yeah. My screen. You're able to see my screen. And then we can get started. So, as you can see, that's my title. And today's topic is going to be building mobile application in the AI era. And why in the AI era? I'll talk about this more. But just because I feel like AI is really increasing productivity at work and in our day-to-day life. So it's good for us to leverage these kinds of skills as we continue to build for customers or for other or for businesses, because if you have a business, I'm sure you might have a mobile app or you might not have it, but these are kind of ways that we can utilize mobile applications. Now, the mobile land. So our agenda today will include the mobile landscape. I'll talk about that. I'll also talk about Android development. I'll talk about iOS development. I'll talk about hybrid development. I'll talk about building with Gemini. Code generation, we'll talk about code generation, and then adding Gemini onto your app. We'll see a simple example on how to do it, and then conclusion. Now, I want to mention, if you're an Android developer, let me get to the other slide and then we can talk about that. So, the mobile landscape. So, when you look at this particular circles here, we have Android and iOS. So Android is Android developers, people who develop for Android. iOS is people who develop for iPhones. I chose Android because I thought it was very accessible. Android is used by so many users around the world as compared to the US, where iOS is pretty popular. But that said, all the OS is pretty good, and getting to work with either really makes your life amazing, because you're like, oh, this is how you build it. I mean, that's the feeling I had myself when I started building for Android. Now, if you decide to build for Android, you will need to know either Kotlin or Java. Now, by Kotlin or Java, these are languages that we use to write this particular code for this particular environment. For instance, in Android, right now it's recommended to use Kotlin. Back in the days, we would use Java, but now it's fully Kotlin. Now, if you're an iOS developer, you might have had these things, Swift or Objective C, similar to Android, the same language that they use to write iOS. Now, if you want to write for both platforms, that is, you want to deploy your applications for both Android and iOS, a couple of big companies use this, and that this can be either using Flutter, React Native, and now there's a new one called KMP, Kotlin Multi-Platform. So you can use either. Now, what is Android development, right? And this is for anybody new, because I thought I would see the chat and see, people join in, and I could ask them, hey, what is your knowledge? Do you know about Android? But I got you. So, Android development, in short, is open source. And this makes it so good because people are able to fork this particular repository and build upon the Android's open source. Now, open source to me, if you ask, in the future, I feel like those are the kind of codes where people will win, because many people in the world can easily jump into this code, understand it, and suggest features to improve and even fork and improve something better for the world. So open source for the win for sure. Now, building with Gemini, right? So how do you build with Gemini inside Android Studio, right? So first of all, if you're very new to Gemini, this is how it looks. I don't know how many of us have interacted or used Gemini, because I do know ChatGPT is pretty popular. So that's why I asked. But before we even jump into building with Gemini, I just want to take a pause and talk about iOS too. When you talk about iOS development, iOS is not very open source. So that means you don't nobody knows the code that iOS builds with. So this means it's specifically internally by Apple. I mean, is that a good thing? Yeah, for the company, it's definitely a good thing. But for developers, I feel like one of the biggest challenges is that if you want to build for iOS, it's not very accessible, because to even have a developer account for iOS, you need to pay, I think, either $99 or $100 every year, as compared to Google, where you, if you want to build for Android, you only pay a one-time fee, which is $25, and you're able to build application. And I find that to be very accessible for the developers, for people who want to learn how to build for the mobile applications. Now let's get back to Gemini. So Gemini is an is similar to ChatGPT. And one of the things that I've come to learn that's really impressive is that now Gemini is integrated inside the Android Studio. So if you're new and wondering, I am not an Android developer, how can I build apps? What do I use? What kind of IDEs do I use? So IDE means integrated development environment, where you're able to write that code, either Kotlin or Java or Swift or Objective C. Android Studio is your friend for Android, and Xcode is your friend for writing iOS code. So, the good thing that I wanted to mention about Gemini is that now Google has integrated Gemini inside Android Studio, and it's officially called the Android Studio bot. So, what does that mean? It means you're able to go into your studio and try to type particular problems, and then StudioBot will recommend solutions, and it will even tell you the best way you can improve your code, which I find to be pretty amazing, especially as a business owner or somebody who knows how to code and wants to improve. Or you have, by business owner, I mean somebody who does consulting for either mobile or just Flutter or any type of consulting. You can easily have Gemini integrated inside your studio, integrated development environment, and build quicker. Now, the one thing that I really love about Gemini and building mobile application in this era is that, unlike before where you would struggle understanding code, building in Gemini has become so much easier that you're able to explain the code in a better way. Let's look at a simple example. Now, if you're new also to this, I'm trying to also be very welcoming to people who've not written code before. So this might look very strange to you, but bear with me. I'll make it as simple as possible. Now, the reason as to why I'm walking us through this is showing you how easily you can actually build applications using AI. And if you don't understand the code you're writing, Gemini will explain the code to you. So this is a simple example that I'm going to show you. Now, we're going to take a simple example here of the things that we can do. Now, one thing that I want to see is if my slides are on flow, because I'm like, am I skipping a slide there? Nope, I'm not. I think we're good. So, a good example is, let's look at what Gemini also offers apart from explaining the code. There's natural language explanation, there's code annotation and comments. We have step-by-step walkthroughs, which is something that I really appreciate, especially for junior developers who are new and try to understand, what is this code doing? Gemini can walk you step by step, and that language that you couldn't understand, you end up understanding it. I like to mention coding is like this new language that you learn. Just like any other language, it's a memory muscle. You have to keep exercising over and over. And then once you become good at it, it becomes easier and it comes naturally. So Gemini helps with that too, like step by step walkthrough. And then it also gives you visualization and diagrams. That is, in some cases, Gemini can generate visual representations like flowcharts or diagram to illustrate how different parts of the code interact and contribute to the final output. Now, why is this important and why am I mentioning this particular point? It's because sometimes we as engineers build something called UML to just see how the classes are connected. And if you're new to a code base, let's say you're a founder or you're not a technical founder, and you find somebody has shared the code that they wrote for you, and you're wondering, how does this work? Right now with Gemini, you can easily integrate it and understand the code just by asking Gemini, hey, can you visualize this for me? And then it would explain it to you, and you're like, oh, wow, now I get this. I don't want to break it down to it being easy. It's not easy, but definitely the more you try to understand it, even though you don't want to code it, it will become easier and easier to understand. Oh, this is what they're trying to do, and this is what they're trying to achieve. Now, Gemini also offers interactive Q&A. That is, Gemini interactive nature allows users to ask and follow up questions or seek clarification on specific aspect of the code. Now, I have to mention, I mean, GPT does that too. And the reason as to why I'm talking about Gemini as much is because Gemini is the only one right now you're able to use inside Studio Bot, inside Android Studio. And that's why, for new developers who are trying to build mobile applications now, when you get the IDE, the Android Studio IDE, just get the Android Studio bot, and you should be able to utilize all these functionalities. Now, it also offers examples and analogies, which are pretty good for getting examples. Let's look at anything else that it offers. So another thing is adaptation to user level. So Gemini can tailor its explanation based on user levels of expertise. Let's say if you're a new developer and you do not know very well how each part connects, like I had mentioned before, let's say someone who's a founder, not a technical founder, and they want to understand their code base, they can definitely follow this adaptation. Follow this Gemini, and then it should be able to help them understand the parts. And something else I like to mention about Gemini too is that it offers a lot of gems. So by gems, these are things that you can use to actually make your life better from time to time. Like for instance, there's easy reviewer, hiring helper, learning coach. But for us, we're not interested with that. We're just interested with the coding guide, because what we're doing is we're building mobile application utilizing Gemini. Yes. Now, one of the other things that I like to mention in my slides is that um, this also helps me fix the code by also, you can use it also to check your homework, coding homework. If you have some homework, you can use it actually to build a website, build a basic website. Like right now, if you went to Gemini and told Gemini, hey, build me a basic website, it will definitely do that. Now you might be wondering, was she paid to talk about Gemini? Absolutely not. I'm not. Absolutely not. I'm not paid to talk about Gemini. I'm just I mean, the, the word is excitement for developers, because when you think about it, back in the days, it would take us the same effort, because many developers spend our time trying to Google the solutions either on Stack Overflow or on other mediums, let's say like GitHub. But now that time is given back to us. So what we can do, instead of doing all that, we can just go to the studio bot and ask those questions there and find those and solve those problems there. So that's why I'm excited. And that's why I think, to me, telling developers about this particular thing exists really will save us a lot, and also save your time, and also enable you to learn faster and scale, because the future is here, AI is here, so we have to talk about it. And also we want to make sure that we are not left behind when everybody starts adapting it. Now let's look at a code example. I'm hoping I wouldn't lose anybody. So here, I took a very simple example, right? Let's think about it, right? The code here is entirely written in Kotlin, if you're wondering. So this is Kotlin code. So in this particular code, I'm saying calculate total price. And you see I have brackets. In the brackets, I have items, right? So assume the list of items. The same way we would have, let's say I'm just calculating the total price of particular items that I'm given. Let's say I have mango or banana and shoes and clothes. So I'm trying to calculate the price for that. And I'm returning a particular thing, which is a double. A double is just a number, like let's say zero point 0.0. Let's say you give money, you will always get some cents back. So that's the idea. So I create a var called Toto, and a var in Kotlin definitely is supposed to be updated. A val cannot be updated. Now, I have for. For is a for loop that loops within the item. So I say for items in items, if the items dot quantity is greater than 0, do this calculation, which is total will be equals to item dot price times item dot quantity. Else will print an error warning the item name has invalid quantity. And then after we've done all our computation, we do what? We return our total, which is initially we declared it as zero point 0.0, but now it will be updated later after we do return total. Now, what are the kind of issues? So when you're new, this code, you'll think, the code looks okay. It's doing what it's needed. But if you dump it to Gemini with a simple example, Gemini will explain to you what some issues are. For instance, as you can see here, Gemini noticed that I'm mixing responsibilities. My mutable state has an issue, and then I have an implicit null handling. Let's read through this. So mixing responsibility, the function calculates the total price, also prints warning messages. This violates the single responsibility principle, SRP. The mutable state, the total variable is modified within the loop, which can make the code harder to reason about. And then implicit null handling, the code assumes item.price and item.quantity can never be null, which sometimes they can be null. So my point is, with this, you can see that if you're a developer and you're trying to understand code and you're trying to make your code more cleaner, Gemini can help you improve that. Now, let's see how, because I tried to ask Gemini, how can I improve this code? Let's see how it's improved it. So we're looking at the same function here. So we have function calculate total price, we have item list, and now we still return a double. And what we've done, we've made it cleaner. So we have valid item, it will be equals to items dot filter. So we are filtering it dot quantity, which it's here, it's item, it's greater than 0. And then we are saying invalid items here will be items minus valid items. And then we finally update our value by saying invalid items dot for each. You do that, print the warning, has, else you return the sum of the two, which is item dot price and item dot quantity. Now let's see an explanation to that. So here, what we've improved is, let's say, clear separation of concerns. So the function now only calculates the total price. Login is handled separately too. For immutability, the code uses val to create a mutable list and the sum of function to calculate the total. And then we handle our null handling. So where we explicit null safety. So we can add null safety checks if items properties are nullable. Let me pause there. I can't see in the chat how many of us are new to coding, so I'm hoping I didn't lose most most of my audience. But if you're pretty new to Kotlin, there are resources that you can utilize to learn Kotlin. Because when you're an engineer building for mobile application, you write code using Kotlin now. And you can definitely go to kotlin.org, and they have great examples on how you can learn that language. Now, if you asked me, how is Kotlin different to Java? I think they're pretty similar, but right now, due to an ongoing issue that Java and Google had, that's why they had to move away from Java. But otherwise, if you ask me as a developer, I feel like both of the languages are similar. Now, there's another advantage that many developers don't like to mention, but I like to mention it even though it's a bit controversial, which is Kotlin and Swift are pretty similar. So if you know how to write Kotlin code, you can easily write Swift in code because they kind of like similar. And the other thing is that once you know how to read code, it becomes easier to read any other codes. For instance, I figured out the other day that I can understand Django code, Python Django, even though I can't write it, but I can read it very nicely. So with over time, you're able to understand these code bases and also jump into it. The syntax, yes, you might struggle with it, but also now with Gemini, it can be able to suggest how you can write it. But otherwise, the flow is what matters. Like, is the logic clear? Is what I'm trying to achieve on point? Now, you might be wondering, so explain these codes to me. So, here, this is a simple explanation. So, filtering and login, we first filter the item list to separate valid items. So, this is Gemini explaining the code to me. So, I was like, hey, Gemini, how about you explain that code? So, as you can see here, we first filter the items list to separate valid items with positive quantity from invalid ones. Then we log a warning for each invalid items and then calculating total. We use the sum of function on the valid items list, which calculates the sum of the results of the provided lambda function for each items. And then we have a not self t, which is optional. So the Elvis operator is used to provide default value like zero point 0.0 for price and O for quantity if these properties happen to be null. Yeah, and there you go. So we had a problem, a code that had problems. We asked Gemini, how can you fix this code? Gemini provided solutions, and when you can look at them, you can tell they make sense. And then Gemini explained to us, this is how you can, this is what changed. So that is something as developers we can definitely utilize now, even building mobile applications, which we'll see next, and be able to move quicker. And also, if you want to pursue the indie development route, trust me, you got this. Now, so benefits of that is cleaner code. I think I've mentioned that maintainability. The code is more modular, which makes it easier to change or extend in the future. Robustness, the code handles potential null values, making it more reliable. So again, going back to the point of you're able to know where the issue is, how you can fix it, and how you can make it better for the future. Now, let's look at adding Gemini onto your apps. Now, even though I cannot see my audience now, the only thing I would want to ask, which just leave it in the comment, I will look at the comments later and try to respond. But I'm wondering how many people have worked with APIs, because for this example, we are going to definitely, and trust me, you can definitely implement this as so this is a workshop, so I know I'm not in person to help you do it, but I'll definitely leave you with tips on how you can get it going, and then I'll share the slides so that you can try it out. And what we'll be building, we are going to build a simple chatbot, because AI right now is mostly used for generative text. So what we're going to build is a simple chat box where you can just ask, what am I doing? And then it can tell you something. Now, the first thing you'll need to do is you'll need to secure your API key. And this is definitely going to be private. So you definitely have to go to Google, Gemini, and ask for a secure key as a developer. I think you should be allowed to have one. I am an expert in Android, so I don't know if they're allowing other people to get it, but you should be able to ask for one, an API key. And once you have the API key, here I'm assuming you have Android Studio, you've downloaded Android Studio, you will need to add this here, this line, which is a dependency that you will add into your Grado. Now, currently, the version will not be similar because when I was making the slide, the version was 0.6.0. You can definitely add use the latest one. Now, so here we're going to initialize the generative model. So what we're going to do, we are going to say val generative model. So the reason as to why I also walked us through a simple code from in the beginning was I wanted to show you that it's the same code that you'll see as we go along, that it's Kotlin code. It's not very different. It's the same code. So you can just definitely, if you're new and you're wondering where do you start, definitely get familiar with Kotlin. And after that, you can definitely build this example app. Now, so you'll have val generative model will be equals to generative model. So the Gemini 1.5 models are versatile and work with most use cases. And then you'll define a model name. So the model name we'll be using is Gemini 1.5 flash, and then you'll make sure you access your API key through your build config. Now, build config is a secure file that we use for API keys so that nobody knows about it. Let's say if you save your codes to GitHub or you send it somewhere remote. Now, let's look at how you can generate text from text only input. This is what ChatGPT is doing, or what it was doing, and this is also what Gemini is doing too, where you pop into Gemini and ask Gemini, "Hey Gemini, what am I eating today?" And then it just babbles. Sometimes you ask, "Hey ChatGPT, roast me," right? And then it roasts you from your recent data. It's pretty similar. So this is what you would need to do. It's very easy. Let me not, I don't like to use the word easy because I know it's not easy when you've not done it, but it's pretty straightforward and easy to do once you get the hang of it. So this is what you need to write. So val generative, I think we've already defined that. So you'll need to write val prompt, and then you can write a story about magic backpack, and then you can say val response. Generative model dot generate content from the prompt. Now, if you've worked with Java, let's say for instance, you might know of something called a scanner. Scanner was something where you could enter something. I think for web developers that's called console.log. I'm not a web developer, but I do know you can console log where you can type something and then it outputs something. It's similar. So you can write val prompt. The prompt would be write a story about a magic backpack, and then val response will be that, and then you can print the response from the model. So what you're doing is you're utilizing the model to r- get this response back. And once you do response to text, it will tell you something about a magic backpack. You can definitely try different ways and see how you'll get that. Now, that's a very simple example. That's why I said that was pretty straightforward. So when you're building your app, so if I wasn't any past, so if we had an in-person workshop, I would definitely pause for like let's say 30 minutes, and then we would do that, and then we'll see how that works. But when you get your own time, please feel free to experiment with that. It should be straightforward. Now, let's look at how you can do with an image input, right? So this is where you have text from text and image input. So here we still have the same code from before. And then when you go next here, we are telling this. So we have a bitmap, and then we have image one, image two, and then we have the input content, which is the content of image one and image two. And then we do have the text. What is the difference between these two pictures, which is image one and image two? And then it will give you a response of, let's say, generative model to generate content, input content, which is the content we have, which we are comparing the two images. And then you would tell it, write me a response, and then it would give you a response to text. Let's see. So sometimes you might have, let's say, a multi-conversation chat. You want to chat with chat, like you want to chat. So we would have the similar code from the beginning, and then this is what we would modify. We would now have a chat, and then a generative model dot start chat, and then we would need to store this in history. So we'll have a history, which is a list of the content. In the content, we'll have a role, which is the user me, and then we'll have the content, which is the role, the model. That the user would have a text, let's say, hello, I have two dogs in my house, and then the content role of a model will be, great to meet you, what would you like to know? And then you would say chat on send message, how many paws are in my house, and then it will generate that for you. Now, these are tricks that you can use definitely if your, let's say, responses are pretty slower, but I'm just going to mention them here pretty quickly as I go through. Now, as you can see here, this is how your applications, once you build it, it should look like. Now, I've not touched on creating, let's say, the edit text, those the views where you would have to put, let's say, the edit text, but this is pretty easy. Ask Gemini, hey Gemini, or Studio Bot, can you create for me an edit text in Android Studio and a button that's aligned this way? And it would do that. Now, also have to mention they have now a way for you to upload an image. So you can completely upload this image and Gemini will write the code for you. How awesome is that? Now, as a developer who's been building and writing code for 10 years plus, what do I think about this? I've had that question a lot. Do you think it's taking our jobs? Or what I would say is that it's really improving people's life. That's what I would say. In the way that I feel like, as humans, we've learned how to adapt, and I feel like people who resist change end up having to deal with a lot of issues later. I can give a simple example. um, BlackBerry is a very good example. They resisted. I don't know what happened, but in my assumption, I assume they resisted change, and BlackBerry disappeared because they wanted to cater to a particular group. The same thing, but then look, they're no longer there. Point is, it's okay to have new things. It's always good to have that mindset of, let me try out and see what happens. Let me learn something new and see where it can take me. So if you're new today in this talk and you've never touched Android, you've never touched iOS, and you're wondering where do you start, this is my word to you. It's never too late to start, and you can start from this simple presentation. Now, as I was walking through the presentation too, I wanted to mention that the Gemini itself, which is in this context the AI, the point of it is to, when you're using it in the context of Android, it's definitely going to be called Android Studio Bot. But of course, they leverage the they leverage the Gemini models. As you notice there in the API key, it was Gemini models. So yeah, it's always a learning process. That's what I like to say. I don't think we can cover everything today, but I'm hoping that with my talk today, I've inspired you to look into how you can utilize that. And also, I want to mention, I feel like other companies too, and many companies already utilizing Copilot, which is an autocomplete, and also has a similar model. I think they're using ChatGPT, where you're able to ask it a question and it can recommend answers and solutions to your code. So yeah, definitely something that future companies and future jobs, I mean, in the future, it might be jobs in prompt engineering, or there might be jobs on how to utilize AI, or you never know. But what I'm gonna say is, don't be like a BlackBerry. I hope they're not hearing me. But I'm gonna Google on what happened to them. I've not Googled, but I bash them from time to time. But don't be like BlackBerry. um, and thank you. That's me. Let's stay connected. Let's stay connected. And that's the end of our presentation. I hope you've picked something, and wrapping this up in the context of, when you're building mobile application, think, how can I build faster in this AI era by just utilizing the already existing models that are there by Google and other companies to just help with productivity, because at the end of the day is productivity. How can I build this? And also understanding the code, making your code cleaner and reading it faster. Yeah, and that's it.
That was amazing, Madam Madonna. I learned so much, and I'm like, man, I don't know why I'm not hitting you up for the gems for in my job, okay? Because I use Objective C and Swift quite often.
Yeah.
So yeah, first of all, just want to say amazing, amazing presentation. I saw like we were definitely getting some love in the chat. There were some folks that were saying that they even had limited experience with APIs, but definitely
Yeah.
want to learn. So I see some questions coming up. You ready for some Q
Yeah,
and A?
yeah, please, yeah, bring the questions. Because I figured it was harder because I can't see my audience.
No worries.
It's okay though, but I love it. Yeah.
No worries at all. So Renee has a question. Can you talk about how Gemini can complement Notebook LM?
That's a very good question. I've not played a lot with Notebook LM. I don't like to lie, but I do know they either utilize it at the back end. But that is something definitely I can look into. But myself, I'm not played around with it. But I think somebody sent it to me, and I
Hmm.
was like, it's actually by, is it by Google? Google
Hmm.
Notebook.
Hmm.
Yeah,
I think.
so it definitely does utilize Gemini.
Hmm.
And I feel like, yeah, Go programming. Let me see. Actually, to be fair, I feel like this is what they're using on Android Studio Bot. It's pretty similar.
Oh, that's so
Yeah,
cool.
it's the bot. Yeah.
That
Because
is.
once you download the Android Studio IDE, itself, you will find Studio Bot. It's pretty similar to that. It just has a chat on the side where you can ask question and then it generates everything for you for mobile developers.
Very, very cool.
Yeah,
Yeah, so that's super cool. I hope that also answers your question. And I do know that if you go on gemini.google.com,
yeah,
they have information about all the different plugins and APIs that you can also
yes,
leverage with
exactly.
Gemini too. So shout out to you, madam. We have more love in the chat from Marisol. Thank you, Madonna. Appreciate your time and presentation.
Thank you.
Delightful presentation, and thank you, Miss Madonna. So I have some questions if
Yeah,
you
please. Yeah,
folks are kind of shy. Um, so for those who are starting out, right, what would you
yeah,
recommend to be like practical ways to begin integrating AI capabilities into mobile apps specifically? I know we mentioned Gemini,
yeah.
but what are like some specific topics or ways that we can leverage Gemini to include like smart features or smart aspects of our applications?
Yeah, I think that would definitely depend with the, let's say, what the mobile applications wants to do. For instance, if I have an app that's, let's say, a shopping app, right? One of the things that I would want to do is make sure that I train the model that I already have, or look for a model that's better understanding the humans in shopping, and then I can say, they like to shop these things. How about I recommend them that they shop this particular thing? And that's why I mentioned this will be particularly just catered based on your application need. But if you want to do it for, let's say, study purposes, I would say definitely get the studio bot inside the Android Studio and try to see how you can load a couple of things. For instance, you can say, go get a screen online. There's so many beautiful screens online. You can say, Gemini, can you create for me? I mean, I know you don't have to say Gemini, but I just find it funny to say Gemini. But you can say, can you create this screen for me? And then it will definitely create that code. Now, one more thing that I have to mention is that it's not perfectly there yet where it will give you good code. So you need a little bit of knowledge to kind of like understand even what the code is doing. Because something that I definitely did forget to mention is that you need to be good at understanding the code, because sometimes you can bring in bugs without knowing. So having a basic knowledge of coding too, actually it's good and it really does help. So having Gemini on the side, or any other, like let's say ChatGPT or GitHub Copilot, which is ChatGPT, can really just add on into your knowledge, because at the end of the day you're just utilizing it to enable you to move faster for developers. Yeah,
Mm, that's
yeah,
really cool. Like, I guess extending on that point of like just knowing a little bit about your code, something that
yeah,
I do sometimes when I'm leveraging um, Gemini,
yeah,
um, I sometimes ask it to like comment each line, like specifically
yeah,
telling me what it's doing, because
yeah,
there are hallucinations, right? So
yeah.
if I notice like, hey, I didn't ask you, to input, X,
Mhm.
or I didn't ask you to tell me about this kind of information, but you gave it to me. Now I'm able to kind of identify like what I needed versus like what, excuse me,
Yeah.
Gemini what I needed. So I think that's so
Yes.
cool.
Yeah.
Um,
And actually, another thing is that instead of put one of the things that I noticed, that it hallucinates when you give it a lot of information at once. But if you give
mm,
it one line, it becomes more clearer, because you're telling it, do this. And then after that step, you build up onto it. So at the end of
mm,
the day, we are training it even more. That's why I'm like, oh, okay, we're also training this, because we give it data, we pause, it gives something. We give it data again, and that's why if I show you my Gemini, which I can't show because I'm a tester, it
mm,
looks very different, and it's Amanda and NDA by with Google because I'm an expert. So the training part of it is also fun. You just give it one line. So when you're trying to also implement, don't just dump a lot of code in there. No, put one line, add into that. How can I improve that? How do you see your and then it will know its own problems.
now that
Yeah,
is so cool. I am learning so much. Um, quick question for
yeah,
you, like regarding those who are perhaps beginners, and
yeah,
then I'll jump back into the chat. But what is your best advice for students who, and maybe career transitioners as well,
yeah.
who are looking to get into this world of AI driven
Mhm.
mobile development? Like, what steps can they take to build their portfolio or
Yes.
maybe also gain practical experience?
That's such a great question because I think I got heartbroken last year. I had
Mm,
a couple of mentees from New York University, computer science. They have masters, but they were struggling to find jobs.
mm,
And I remember in our sessions, they asked me, what can we do about this? And I noticed that it's definitely a problem because especially in mobile, they we don't hire. I mean, I'm not saying we as a company, but I feel like many companies don't hire junior developers, especially in mobile. They want senior developers, and I feel like that has been a limiting factor for many stu- college graduate to even wonder, is this the right field for me? So what I would say, definitely one of the things that I've told my mentors after that scenario is, if you're trying to build a portfolio, just be authentic, do the
mm,
stuff you've done, and don't lie. Because I noticed a couple of people, due to pressure, you might start saying, just writing things for the sake of writing things, and sometimes they don't, they work out, they fake it till you make it. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it backfires.
mm,
So I think it's just building your authentic self, definitely writing what you've done, and also contributing. That's the thing that I would really encourage more people to do now. Contribute to open source. Open source is gonna win, because in the future, let's say those jobs are limited, because let's say people have moved to other fields. At the end of the day, people who contribute to open source a lot, you have an upper hand because open source will always be there. And people will always contribute to open source. So open source is a good entry point for an engineer who wants to try. Now, I normally tell my students, to my mentees too, that hey, look, you don't need a big open source to start. You can also start at your school level, which is create a big project. Think of a solution you're trying to solve. Get 5 people, start building together, understand how it's built. I did that with a project back in the days, and it helped 5 people get a job. I created one project, and then people would contribute on it, and then would build, and then we completed the app. So
wow.
that's an idea I like to give to students to try that avenue too, because that is a project you can showcase that you've done. Like, it's tangible. Now, the other thing is definitely be open to learning for sure. There's new learning avenues. If don't be BlackBerry. I like to it. Don't be a BlackBerry. Be someone who's willing to learn and willing to change with the time, because look, things are moving faster right now. I think the last time I heard, the CEO of Nvidia said there will be no future tech jobs, right? Because it's going to take up the tech jobs. I don't think that's true immediately. It will take time because AI itself doesn't, but I do see that potential in the future where,
Mm,
I mean, we can just have few developers who sit back and kind of like DevOps. DevOps is something that will definitely stay for long. So I'm just hinting. So DevOps is something that can stay for longer, because think about it. We will need someone to automate that, to watch, because what happens if 1 million customers cannot access your product, right? Who do
mm,
you call? The DevOps people. So those careers are definitely important. So looking into stuff like that too, and also leveraging AI. Yeah.
mm. Okay.
So just learning about the career. I know I've said a lot, but definitely learning on what career aspects are there. DevOps is one, it's pretty good. Cloud technologies are pretty good future jobs. Cybersecurity, very big. Mobile is pretty big, but there's a big problem in mobile where I noticed not people don't hire a lot of juniors. So being an entry point for junior is a very it's I would like to say it's a good start, because there's not that where we need a mobile developer for from fresh from college. So, but once you're inside the company and you love mobile, you can easily transition inside and say, can I? And then when you see a role, you can easily just apply for a role inside. But also doesn't mean you shouldn't apply. They might want a junior person. But
I
just
like
speaking
that.
from what I've seen and observed, yeah.
Okay. I
Yeah.
love that so much, and I hope you guys are receiving the gems that Madam Madonna is giving. We had another question from
Yeah.
Renee. If you're wanting to learn Kotlin, do you recommend to learn a language before it, or can we just like jump in?
Yes, I think I would say jump in. I
Mm.
don't think I would say learn another language because I feel like once you know one language, you're good. You will always understand the others because they're the same. Right now, I can read Swift codes. I can learn. I can read Django. I debug Python without even knowing how it's written, but I can debug it and say this is what the bug is. So knowing one pretty well really helps you utilize that knowledge and where you can easily just navigate the other code bases. So jump into it. I would say jump into Kotlin. Don't worry about the others.
That is a really awesome point and perspective as well. And I think also too because it's like you said, it's quite simple and it's
Yeah,
similar to that of Swift, where it's not like a verbose language like Objective C.
yeah.
It might be easier to adapt as well. So yeah, I love that. Another question from Lejeune. I hope I'm saying that right as well. But how would I guess her question is how would I know if tech is a career path for me? How
Hmm.
did you both decide tech was what you wanted to pursue?
Well, for me, actually, this is funny because I didn't tell you that, but I wanted to be an aeronautical engineer because I loved planes. I was like, who built that thing? I want to know how it's built because I was like, that thing is flying how? So I wanted to be an aeronautical engineer, but then I didn't end up becoming one. Because I learned about computers and I was like, who made computers? So initially, I'm a curious person. So I was very curious about how are computers made. And I was like, I love this thing. The same thing with the snake game. So I ended up going to software because I was like, oh, people that do this do computer engineering and all that. I was like, okay, I think this is good for me because I was more into trying to understand how it's done. It's like
Mm,
when you see manufacturing, right? You're like, how do they manufacture that? So for me, it wasn't the interest of how like the bars, like this tech. No, it was more of how is that done? How can I do it? And then I ended up doing it. Now for aeronautical engineering, I really wanted it so much, but then I was like, I don't think it's attainable now, but I love laptops. How are they made? And then I applied
mm.
to school and then I went to Auburn. I graduated and then here I am doing now my MBA. See now, so that's a good question too that you ask, is it a career path for you? Because for me, I love tech so much, but I'm also a business person because I love business. So I'm like, I need to see how I can merge the two. So my answer to you would be, find something you're passionate about, something that you'll wake up every day and say you enjoy doing it, and then you will know if that's the right path for you. If you will not enjoy writing the code, don't even try. It will make you feel very terrible doing it every day. You're like, oh, I don't like, but I enjoy writing the code. I enjoy waking up, fixing those problems. In fact, from time to time, my kids look at me like, what are you solving? I'm like, I'm solving a bug because I'm so concentrated on it. Yeah.
That
But
is
yeah,
amazing. That's amazing. I have another question in regards to, and I hope that also answers your question, Lejean, as well. I have another question in regards to Android development, and I
yeah,
guess most of my questions is coming from a software engineer perspective. But
yeah.
how what are some best practices that you follow, like to ensure your code quality is there, like your maintainability is there? I know you mentioned that also in
Yeah.
your slides, and even scalability when it comes to your Android projects. And sorry, y'all, my cat
It's okay. We
is
love
a
to see cats. Are
speaker.
you kidding me?
He's like, Ma, you've been on a computer all day. It's time to go. But I'm listening.
Now, that's also a good question. And I would say for Android, knowing the good patterns and good practices is just following their. So we have, okay, so since building for mobile is a big thing, especially for Google, because Google has, I mean, Google's biggest product actually is Android too. Android is pretty big because they have the Pixel and then many
Oh,
people use Android. And they always OS too. Many people flock from it and use it. Like Samsung is a big partner, Qualcomm, all these big companies. So they have a complete dedicated channel for developers to follow good patterns, and that's what we follow. So, for instance, as a developer, you need to ensure that you're using. I think Swift also uses that model view model,
mhm,
and also that will depend with your company. Some companies use different models, but if
mhm,
you're a new developer trying to build your fast app, that is what I would recommend. And also following developers.android.com just to learn the new I mean, the safest way to write your code. But
Mm,
otherwise, it's pretty straightforward and laid out for you to follow. Like how you write your views, how you ensure you have accessibility on the phones, how you ensure that your code is maintainable, it's robust. All that is there for you. It's like back in the
mm.
days when I was writing it, it was so terrible and disorganized. But now I'm like, oh, developers, you have it so easy, which is good because I like it when you make it easier because I don't think you need to make it complex. It shouldn't be complex.
Mm,
Yeah.
I love that. I love that so
Yeah.
much. I don't see any other questions in the chat, and I
Yeah.
know we're almost at time. So
Yeah.
I just want to say, Madonna, thank you so much for sharing your
Thank you
insight.
too.
This
Thank you
was
too
so
for inviting me.
of course, I'm so excited to have you. And like I said, I've learned so much. I cannot wait offline to like
Try it out.
send all of
Yeah,
yes. I'm gonna
try it
sing.
out. It's
Yes, I'm
yeah,
gonna
the
give
simple
my
code because building mobile applications using Gemini is just definitely utilizing Gemini to build your application. But you can also use the models that are already there to see how you can build for generative AI.
mm,
And for small businesses, let's say you can build a chat box. It's
mm.
the same process, yeah. Calling the APIs, making that happen, yeah.
I'm so excited to even like I said, get started, start my own little projects myself, but also see how I can leverage that. Specifically with Swift as well. Not
Mhm.
business, not code for my job, but
Yeah,
just in general. Like as I'm learning,
yeah.
so that's super exciting. Obviously, it's clear that the
Mhm.
intersection of AI and mobile development is a dynamic space, and I'm
Yeah.
excited. And hope others are excited as well from this conversation to jump in as well.
Mhm.
Do you have any final thoughts or key takeaways that you definitely want to make sure that we know of?
Yeah, key takeaway, it's not hard and it's not easy. You can do it if you believe you can do it.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's so beautiful.
that's true. Yeah.
Yes, we love it. We're seeing the love in the chat come in as well. So
Yeah.
yeah, we just want to say thank you so much for your time, Madonna, and your experience. I am going to just go ahead and put Madonna's information back on the screen. Please go ahead and scan this QR code. It's going to take you to LinkedIn, correct?
Yes, LinkedIn,
I
yeah.
think it should- Yes. And go
Yeah.
ahead. Super active on there as well. Oh, Madonna, you also have a book. You have to
Oh,
talk about the
yeah.
book.
Yes, I have a book. If you want to learn Android, grab my book.
Yes. What's the name of it?
Modern Android 13 Development Cookbook.
Oh my goodness, that's amazing. Okay. Is there a way that we can also find that on your LinkedIn as well?
I don't think I've linked it there, but I can just share with you the link. And once you get it,
Absolutely.
please review it.
Yes,
Send me some
absolutely.
review.
Where is this available on? Amazon, Barnes and Noble?
Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Walmart.
Okay. Madonna, yes.
Yes.
Okay. It's giving multifaceted. I love it. I love it. So here's the link in the chat. Is it an audiobook as well?
No, I have not done an audiobook yet because this is pretty different. It's a programming book. So it's very hard to do an audiobook for programming because you're like, how are you going to explain the
Oh,
code or the images?
this is true. Okay, well that's amazing. I
But
hope
I'll
you
think about it too.
absolutely. I did go ahead and drop the link in the chat here. So if you all are already in the live chat, you guys can go ahead and click on that and view it.
Yeah.
We definitely want to support wonderful entrepreneurs as well. But with that being said, have a wonderful night, Madonna. Thanks so much for
You
coming by.
too. Thank you for inviting me and having me, and thank you all for joining.
Our pleasure. Round of applause.
Bye. Yeah.
Bye, love. Have a
Bye.
good one.
Bye.
Well, I hope you all enjoyed our wonderful session today with the most amazing Madonna. She is incredible, as you all can see. She's so kind, so gentle, and you know what I mean? To be her mentor would be amazing. Okay. So please feel free to make sure that you go ahead and add her on LinkedIn. She is not one of those individuals who won't add you back. She will add you back and also engage with you as well. If you are interested in Android development, like she just mentioned, go ahead and check out her book. Again, she is a Google expert. Like Google flies her to so many different events around the world to test their products because she is literally an expert. So if you're looking for someone like that of that caliber to mentor you, encourage you, speak life into you, and ultimately help you with getting a job, baby, it's given. Tap in. Okay. For those of you who also might want to learn about, I'm sorry, y'all, my cat is just so ghetto at this moment and disrespectful. But for those of you who are interested in understanding and knowing other content that we have available for you all, please go ahead and check out our LinkedIn or our Instagram. You can go ahead and swipe to see what other sessions we have available next week, next week, Wednesday, the 12th. And then after that, the 19th. We do have a special guest from Google themselves and they will be giving a wonderful talk and session that we're actually going to get our hands dirty with. Okay. So please stay tuned for that announcement coming up. Until next time, bye everyone. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of the day.